Oh, are we all here, but we just can't see anything? Oh, that's funny. Till I said start video, it showed me some weird configuration screen.
How's it going, Peter?
Good, how you guys doing?
All right. I think we'll probably give it a few more minutes.
Should I post this in the cloud channel just in case anyone's looking for it?
Sure.
Quick side note, as long as we're all silent here, is anyone, uh, is there a documented caveat with trying to use decorators inside of salt modules?
Um, Not that I'm aware of. Um, are you running into something?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and it sort of makes sense. It looks like I was trying to do basically a caching decorator to try to get EC2 tags. It seems like when um, it's just one of those things where it seems like I asked a question about knowing whether or not a specific grain was cached the other day. I didn't think I got an answer. So just like adding caching so I can see that I'm getting some timeouts and some slowdowns from the tag API, trying to not let us get as many as we might want or as fast as we would like. And the interesting thing about the caching decorator is that because I'm accessing the Salt Dunder dictionary, it doesn't seem to be available when it's inside of that inner closure that a decorator creates.
Yeah, it could be some function of the loader that's preventing you from getting access to it. So I was messing around with POP and ran into a similar issue. I was using the AIO HTTP API spec library, and you have decorators for adding docs to Swagger and things like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working in certain instances with POP, but made some changes, and now it's working. Given that POP in essence is sort of based off of the genesis of the Salt loader, it's quite possible that you have a similar issue there. But I wouldn't know exactly where to point to inside of the code to figure that out.
As a workaround, like now that you're mentioning it that way, now that I'm talking about it, it seems like if I actually had the function that was decorated call out to another function that would actually invoke the Salt dictionary, the loader would probably find it and be able to update it.
Yeah, I did a similar workaround in POP before the decorator issue was fixed. So I think you can definitely work around it.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, unfortunately, I just took the cache out of the decorator and made it a global function. So that, there you go. It's memoized, but with a global.
Gotcha. Well, it is nearly 10 minutes after. I was going to see if Tyler at least was going to join. But let's go ahead and get started. Happy Valentine's Day.
Is it?
It is.
I thought Valentine's Day was on a Tuesday or something.
It's February 14th every year.
Clearly, I got it confused with Thanksgiving. All right. They don't celebrate it around here, so it's not a big day.
Yeah. So one thing that that wasn't inside of the thread that's preventing me from just sitting here and reciting poetry was that I noticed that POP projects are getting moved into GitLab. I was hoping that that Tyler would be on so he could sort of speak to maybe why that's occurring. But I guess just stating the fact that it is in fact occurring will have to be good enough for now. So if you're looking for like item cloud, other POP projects that are coming out of SaltStack, I think that they're in the process of being moved to GitLab. So take a look there.
So I'm one of the SREs. I'm Bryce Larson. I'm one of the SREs that's helping do that. The main reason we're switching is it's just a lot easier to scale the number of jobs we have to create because there's so many repos for the POP projects.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you for the explanation.
Come again?
It's just a lot easier there's templates that we can just include so that they're all the same. We can have containers in the registry so that they're all using the same container, same templates. We can just include them. It's just a lot easier to have everything be the same in GitLab compared to other places.
I see. So it's more for the CI aspect of it than anything else?
Yep.
Cool. Looks like Cedric joined. So there was a comment inside of that thread for topics about item plugin conventions. And I wasn't sure if there was anything in particular that we wanted to discuss around that, but I think that some of it's going to be hopefully handled by contracts inside Item Cloud, kind of the structure of things, and then also Item itself. It's going to by default look inside of the exec and states directories inside of the project in order to dynamically load in functions. So I think that some of that is going to sort of dictate the structure of things. But Cedric, is there anything in particular that you wanted to bring up in regard to the plugin conventions for Item?
It was mostly about namings, about the plugins, and where to store things when porting over to Item. But I think since the grains have been moved recently, the command run has been moved recently, things start to shape up a little bit. So far it should be okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think as we get more example type projects out there, it'll sort of solidify how things are being done. I know that utilities inside of Item don't really get their own segment, right? You basically have execution and state modules, and the idea being that utilities, which would normally live in a separate area inside of Salt, are getting moved into the exec directory. So I know in the Azure provider, I had snagged like the dick differ utility and things like that were sort of general purpose utilities, and moved them into execution just because I needed to use them. And I'm sure we'll work out like exact positions for all of those as we're working through those.
Yeah, this mostly the utils things. When you have something in the utils you want to port over, there's always the question of whether we want to drop that or whether we want it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in the plugin or somehow shareable by others with others, so this.
Yeah, I think that's probably the toughest question to cover, right? I think that there's a lot of value in having standard utilities in a standard location, whether it be an item proper or something that's merged in that's more generalized, some sort of like pop utils or something like that. Because, I know a lot of the states in particular, when they're doing diffs of dictionaries, they use dickdiffer. So to have it housed inside of the Azure provider doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. But given it was really the first plugin, I had to put it somewhere short term. So yeah, that'll probably move out over time. I just need to figure out exactly where that good location is.
Yeah, I think we can just maybe start a list of these things that we encountered and bring them back to Tyler, Thomas, or who would be in charge of figuring out where to put it into a core module.
Mm-hmm. I'll make a note of that. Okay, and Cedric, I saw that you're making some good progress on the libvirt provider. Is there anything that you wanted to bring up about that? I saw that you were getting involved in sort of the grains work that Tyler's doing for your purposes. Anything else going on?
Well, so far I'm working on two projects at the same time, so I didn't have much time to continue on the item provider.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the libvirt cloud provider that I'm porting over. It's the virt modules and states, which is kind of different. And at some point in time later on, the virt cloud provider, if it still makes sense, would need to rely on these ones.
Okay.
As of today, it duplicates the code.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case with most of these, right? So for the item providers, and as we get into starting to discuss AWS things, really what we're talking about when we're porting these over is the state modules. And by virtue of porting the state modules, also they rely on the execution modules, so we would be porting those over. If there's any functionality that is required that isn't covered by those, that is inside of the cloud modules, then we would have to duplicate that somehow. But really, it's the execution and state modules that are the things that we're moving over because we're sort of changing paradigm, right? There isn't going to be a one-shot cloud provider that you execute against the cloud. We're really looking to be more idempotent and state-based and write normal states to do cloud things as opposed to having some special thing out there that is different than the normal salt-like workflow.
I had small questions about providers.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be interesting to port the libcloud provider to item, because that one could give us access to a lot of clouds providers in one shot?
Yeah, I think that there's value in it because it's a generic way to hit a lot of different things. Generally, what you lose with that provider is specific service access and things like that. So there's pros and cons to it. I think that it could be useful if it's easy to port over. But like I said, the cloud providers are, if you were to look at that code, that's actually in the cloud section versus the states, then you're going to have to bake in a lot of the things that are normal for states, right? Like all of the checking for differences between the existing object and the object that you're trying to create. So it might be a heavy lift there. I don't know if there's any libcloud state modules that would be easier to port over. I haven't looked into that, but I think it's worth talking about. The bigger ask that people are bringing up a lot is, when are we gonna have AWS functionality? And over the last several meetings, I've asked for people that would be interested in trying to start up that process because I know that I haven't had time to try and pick at it. Same goes for libcloud. If there's anybody out there that would like to take that on and sort of drive that project, I think there's value in both of those. I did look at the AWS functionality in states, and it looks like right now we have 33 distinct AWS state modules. It runs the entire gamut, right? There's things named AWS _ SQS, and then some Bodo 3, Elasticache, Elasticsearch, Route 53, and then a whole bunch of Bodo API gateway and so forth. Bodo EC2 would be the one that would duplicate the existing AWS Salt Cloud functionality. And there already is an instance present and absent state. So there's like 12 states inside of that EC2 state module. So yeah, that might be a good first hack for anything AWS specific, would be to attack the EC2 state module and see how hard it would be to port that over. And then the rest of the 30 some odd modules sort of come afterwards.
If anyone's got a few minutes to just show me where to get started, because the thing about this is I'm still so much in SALT 2018 and 2019 at this point that the conversations here, I've tried to follow them by reviewing some of the older videos, but it doesn't really make clear to me what the steps are. And I understand that there's the progress of the Azure module and that. I didn't really get to follow that so much because I'm still feeling there's a piece I'm missing in putting it together, but I'm pretty much elbow deep in AWS most of the time. I don't have a problem. I've done a fair amount in Salt Cloud and Salt code base. I mean, nothing like an employee of Salt, but it's not scary to me anyway. I wouldn't mind giving this a shot. It's kind of up my alley here, but I just would need some advice on where to start looking and sort of what a first set of tests should look like.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You can start with the Azure provider structure to see how it is built and then do something from scratch using that. And what Tyler had me doing was run PopSeed.
PopSeed?
PopSeed is a tool that comes along with Pop, and it creates a template project that you can just populate.
Yeah, there's sort of a getting started with Pop link that I can drop into Slack that walks you through that process. And I think it might be the Poppy repository. I'm not sure, but Poppy is basically like a demo web service built on Pop. So it's not specific to the type of things that we're doing with Item, but it is sort of a getting started with Pop demo, and I can drop that link. Also, I handed off to Tyler
What's the Python? I'm just getting a Python environment set up here just to start installing the packages. We mentioned them so I don't lose them too fast. What's the Python version we're targeting here?
3.
I think 3.6, 3.7.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's some big differences between them. I prefer 3.7, but if 3.6 is what we're doing, that's, I guess, what I want to know.
Yeah.
Well, at least we can kill all Python 2 code.
Yeah, I just don't want to make something that causes complaints later, so I guess 3.6. Sorry about that, but thank you. I just want to be clear that that there wasn't like a formal cutoff for 3.7 or something with this work.
Yeah, no problem. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that I handed off a document to Tyler. I think he was going to try and put it inside of the Item Cloud repository, but I looked just before the meeting and it hasn't shown up there yet. But basically, it's just a document that walks you through the changes that I had to make to the Azure states in order to have them fit inside of the item provider model. And since that hasn't been published, if you want, I could probably just create a snippet inside of the Cloud Slack and drop it in there. And you can take a look through that. But basically it goes through and says, okay, well, you have salt dunders in there. They're gonna have to be changed to referencing the hub inside of Pop, and things like that. So as you're going through the state modules, you just sort of walk through that list of things to look for, and should give you a good starting point. So I can do that.
All right, yeah, I'll ping you in Slack. I think that's probably the right place to ask for this and see how it works.
I pushed a bunch of links on Slack on Pop related resources.
Awesome.
To get started with Pop and Item.
And so this is gelling for you now, is that right, Cedric?
Pardon?
This is starting to gel for you, the notion of using Pop and how this is shaping up.
At least it's, I understand now how it's working. So once you get started, it's just like normal coding, and the migration is not so hard, in fact, because you can almost copy paste.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few things that you need to tweak, just because we're using async async await functions, and um, there are things like the underscore salts, things that don't exist anymore. But other than that, almost everything can stay as is.
What are you doing for synchronous calls at the bottom of this if everything is async IO at the top?
Well, that'll be a question for Tyler.
Okay.
I didn't get that problem. Yeah.
What was the question?
Well, there are a couple of ways of going about introducing synchronous calls, right? There's some function, there's some event loop function you can attach to take synchronous calls and wait on them. Otherwise, you end up holding the event loop if you call something synchronous, right?
Yeah, so pretty much everything inside item should be async. Yeah, that's one of the things. I just posted the walkthrough document since I don't have a link to show you for that one. And inside of that, it's basically like, hey, walk through your defs and make them all async, because that's kind of the paradigm that we're moving towards. Item has the ability to run everything in parallel, and async allows that process to be a little bit cleaner. So we should be able to get to a point with item where it's way faster than anything that we've been working inside of Salt before, because parallel, async, and what was I going to say? Yeah, that's what I get for trying to read and talk at the same time. Never works out well. But it's going to be very fast. I was talking about the transparent requisites. So transparent requisites inside of the providers, you can specify precursors to objects. So, for instance, in the Azure cloud provider, I can say, hey, if there's any resource groups, those need to be executed before virtual networks, because a virtual network has to be inside of a resource group. So just generally saying that type of object must come before. That way I don't have to define requisites inside of my my state descriptions, and I could do them in any order. So I could put my virtual network at the top of the file and my resource group at the bottom, and execute things in parallel, and item's going to go ahead and figure out all of those requisites for me, at least where they're defined, and that way I don't shoot myself in the foot. Yeah, so I think you can take those links and also that walkthrough, and if you have any questions, definitely reach out. And if you can get sort of like the stub of the beginning of AWS stuff, that would be super awesome.
Yeah, like I said, I'll take a run through it. I don't imagine it should be that tough, but yeah, I'm personally curious with the AWS stuff, because there's so many little functions that are built up inside of the Salt Cloud provider that should be pretty trivial, but I don't want to lose any of those things if there's going to be a transition later on down the line.
Yeah, so some of the things to watch out for inside of the AWS stuff, right, is like looking at the Boto EC2 states, determining if there's huge functional differences between what's in Salt Cloud and what the states actually do, and then also potentially having to update some of that code, right, because they're a lot older than the Azure stuff was. So there might be some weird paradigms in there that we want to try and get away from. So it's there's going to be there's 12 states inside of the Boto EC2 module. That would sort of be the first hack that I would take a look at if I was you, and just sort of do comparisons. Okay, so I think that covers most of the things that were brought up inside of Slack with plugin conventions. A little bit of discussion of EC2 stuff, GitLab. I made a note that I'm going to bring up general utils location, see if we can figure out where those guys are going to go. And so if we have any other questions, we have 27 minutes to go through them. Or if you guys just want to do poetry, we could do that. No, nothing. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and call it then. If anybody has anything else that they want to bring up, definitely throw it out there in Slack. And Peter, appreciate you taking on the first steps for the AWS stuff, and we'll go from there.
Right on. Well, try to catch up with you in a few days and see if I've got anything.
Awesome. Well, everybody have a good day and a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Ciao.
Bye.